After we did the show, we really felt heard, we felt seen, we really felt the reaction, especially from the students.
Today on this series, we're talking about a show called Dear Children Sincerely, Rwanda Sri Lanka collaboration.
It started in a really beautiful way, actually, just out of a friendship. Hope Azeda, the two of us met in 2015. I had this idea where I wanted to interview the generation born in the 1930s, and she had this idea where she wanted to start a festival.
What was the Sri Lanka that you grew up in like?
In 1983, when I was 8 years old, the civil war started in my country. It was a very difficult time. We've all lost somebody. People just survive in situations like that, don't they? I mean, nothing really stops. We had a fantastic time growing up in Sri Lanka. Interspersed with all the terrible things that happened, we just got on with life.
Where did the idea of speaking to the elders come from?
People who were possibly born before the 40s. I was struck by the fact that this generation has something very unique to give us. Not enough has been done to really capture what they really wanted to do with the world. We were able to get people to reflect quite deeply.
Hey, welcome to the Art Center at NYU Abu Dhabi podcast. My name is Mike Yimhenna. Today on this series, we're talking about a show called Dear Children Sincerely, Rwanda Sri Lanka collaboration. And with me is the artistic director, Ruwanthie de Chickera, who was in Abu Dhabi for the performance at the end of September. The performance was like September 26th or 27th, but we still wanted to publish this conversation to talk about the experience. So, Ruwanthie, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mikey.
So I guess the first thing I want to kind of start with is talking about sort of the collaboration, the Rwanda Sri Lanka collaboration. So maybe kind of let's start there. How did that come about? I think let's start there, and then we can kind of go backwards into your journey, if that's okay.
That's fine. It started in a really beautiful way, actually, just out of a friendship. So Hope Azeda, who is the artistic director of Mashirika, a theatre company in Rwanda, she's also the festival director of this incredible festival called the Ubuntu Festival of Humanity, which is in its 11th year in Rwanda. The two of us met in 2015, January, in Ireland, in a very, very cold, theatre. And we bonded, me from Asia, her from Africa. We bonded very closely. I had this idea about this project that I wanted to do, where I wanted to interview the generation born in the 1930s. And she had this idea where she wanted to start a festival. And we kind of made a pact that we'd help each other. And she initiated the festival that year. And I launched our project, what we call the Dear Children Sincerely project. And she and I decided that Rwanda and Sri Lanka will collaborate on it, and I will direct the production that would open the festival, which would be a collaboration of Rwandan and Sri Lankan artists engaging with their respective elders in their own countries, which is what the project is all about, the Dear Children Sincerely project.
I love that it's a collaboration. I love it that you say the proper noun of the country as opposed to like the people. I love that it's a collaboration between the place of Sri Lanka and the place of Rwanda, as opposed to like the people. It's an interesting frame. It's an interesting frame. Was it this intentional?
Not so much, I think. I mean, Rwanda Sri Lanka collaboration, let's face it, is a pretty awful title. But I think it just probably some lazy work there, The DCS project itself is much larger, and there's many productions under it. I think that kind of leads to the fact that it's called the Rwanda Sri Lanka collaboration, because we thought of it. We started off with what we thought was one show, and then it sort of proliferated. There were so many other shows. We needed to mark this one as separate. And so, though this was the original show, it became known as the Rwanda Sri Lanka collaboration, because then there DCS something else and DCS something else, and so there's many DCS shows. DCS stands for Dear Children Sincerely. So, yeah, that was the reason why we chose that name.
How did your sort of journey into theater begin? What drew you to this type of storytelling as a way of engaging with sort of social and political issues and questions and the world around us?
Um, I think its roots really are in my childhood, and I think I can trace them quite firmly back to my father. My father's an Anglican priest. He's very much a social worker, very engaged with community affairs, with politics, etc. And he brought me and my brothers up very much in an environment of conversation, him and my mom together. And I think that my two brothers, one of them is a human rights lawyer, the other is a journalist, and I'm an artist. So all three of us have chosen paths that really force us to engage with society. And I don't think that's a coincidence.
Yeah. It's interesting because like people, I think a lot of, if you spoke to children in school or in university and they think about theater, um, a lot of them think about it being a playful experience, right? It's like you call it a play, right? Oh, let's just get on stage and have a lot of fun, wear some makeup, put on just have a good time, right? Um, it doesn't seem like it's that we always express the capabilities of theater as a way to understand the world around us and sort of engage with some of the problems of our moment and the potentials of our moment. How did how did you sort of enter into that understanding of what theater can do in society?
I think for me, it was just a tool. It was a tool that I discovered that I was reasonably good at by chance. I mean, I'd always read a lot. But in school, I went to a all girls school, and we had a kind of a house system like in Harry Potter. You have houses and you have competitions in the houses. And one of the really look forward to competitions was the inter-house drama competition. We had to write our own scripts. And I could write, but I didn't know I could write plays. And I was bullied into writing my first script at the age of 15 by some, prefect, and that won that inter-house drama competition. And the rest is history. I just kept on writing. So I found it very easy. And I think, again, circling back to the conversations, I think through my childhood, I developed a ear for conversation and storytelling. And I used to read a lot as well.
So interesting. What was the Sri Lanka that you grew up in like?
It wasn't a very, okay, let me put it this way. I was going to say it wasn't a very happy place, but then I realized it actually was quite a happy place. But it's one of those things. I was born in 1975. In 1983, when I was 8 years old, the Civil War started in my country. And I have memories of that time. And it continued for 30 years, right? So that's the macro level things that were happening in the country. And it was a very difficult time. There in the meantime, in addition to the Civil War, there was an insurrection, and there was other political unrest as well. So there were bombs, Mikey. There were bomb drills in schools. We've all lost somebody. My father, my parents themselves were very involved in this whole situation, because my father was appointed bishop, ordained as bishop, was the end of the war, which meant that he would actually travel into war zones where nobody else could go because he had parishes there. So it was something that we lived in, but as people just survive in situations like that, don't they? So nothing really stops because you happen to be in a war situation. So we continued, and we had a fantastic time growing up in Sri Lanka. It was really lovely, interspersed with, all the terrible things that happened. We just got on with life, and we played, and we told stories, and we hung out, and we grew up, and all of that happened. We got married and had kids, and all of that happened.
Where did the idea of really focusing on speaking to the elders come from? This idea of wanting to do interviews with elders born in the 30s. Why that decade, and or sort of just the idea of speaking to that generation? Where did that come
Uh,
from?
yeah, so Sri Lanka, like a lot of other countries, received independence in the 40s, 1948 specifically. So that's when the British Empire started sort of collapsing and colonization came into question, right?
And the
So,
sort of like age of what they call age of independence,
yeah,
global.
exactly. Like
Yeah.
the new world emerges, right? So post World War, the new structures that we have now inherited, all these sort of global institutions, human rights, all of these things began in the late. These ideas began in the 40s, and I was struck. I can't trace it down to a particular day, but I was struck by the idea that very soon, uh, this we would lose sight of this very significant generation. People who were possibly born before the 40s, but were old enough to have memories of this huge shift, you know, out of the chaos of the Second world wars into these new world orders, right? These new nation states, these new countries being sort of born all over the world. The idea of human rights, the feminist movement, all of these things that were, the women's movement, all of these things that were beginning, the class struggles, moving from sort of socialism to capitalism. Before that, all of it. So I was struck by the fact that this generation has something very unique to give us, and not enough has been done to really capture what uh, their perspective and also what they really wanted to do with the world. Because they would have been young in the 40s, in the 30s, and it would have been a pretty heady time, I imagine. It's like a clear slate, right? It's a clean slate. There's been utter chaos. The world has fallen apart. And then suddenly you're a teenager and there's all of these, or you're in your 20s or whatever. And there's all of these grand ideas. And I imagine that they would have wanted to do their very best by all of this. They would have wanted to, in my own little small country. I imagine the Sri Lankans that inherited their country after 550 years of being colonized, right? I mean, all memory of what they were as a people before by then had essentially been wiped out. Like so many generations of colonization over several entities, several colonizers. So, what would these young people have wanted to do with this country?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like it's such a beautiful intention, and it's such a powerful idea. I really like I'm moved even just by the idea, because especially like for those of us who grew up in these places that were colonized that gained independence. I'm in Beirut right now. We have a really similar story. Um, I feel like it's very easy for me to look at these national projects that I was born into and say, this is ridiculous. This is just a shadow of colonialism. These lines don't matter. This flag is ridiculous. The national anthem is absurd. Like, this is a sham. This is all this different stuff. I can say that stuff very easily. But when I've spoken to also that generation, you can hear that they're like, no, but there was a hope. There was this. I swear we were trying our best. I swear there was an idea. We were trying to chisel together a nation, and we were trying to understand that this could be a thing. You know,
Mm.
it's beautiful. Do you feel like you mostly heard melancholy or sadness or anger or cynicism? or hope?
We had to push through the nostalgia, actually, because a lot of them just want to talk about the good old days. So we really, when we interviewed the people that we interviewed, we really pushed them to be self-critical more than anything else. And a lot of them were, actually. And I realized this also. I learned so many things, Mikey, through this whole process. I learned that, it's a great age to interview people when they're old, because they've let go of a lot of trappings, I think, of ego. Um, they have a little bit more courage, some a little bit more freedom. They have maybe a fair amount of guilt. Maybe they've got a sense of legacy or what they really want to leave behind. And we were able to kind of get people to reflect quite deeply on what had gone wrong in good faith, actually, as you said, for the most part. It also, I must add, in addition to the another thing that really brought home the value of the project was the urgency of it, because of course there's a clock that's ticking, right? Some of the people that I interviewed have passed away. One of them passed away 2 days ago. Uh, them it was the last interview that they ever conducted. So there's a real sense of urgency that if we don't do this, we lose that perspective and we will never ever really be able to recreate it, because that generation was quite unique. I think if you imagine what they have gone through, I mean, they didn't even have telephones when they were born,
Yeah.
you know? I mean, their life has just spanned an incredible growth in humanity. So, yeah, it's been quite a sort of almost sacred experience conducting these interviews, disseminating them, trying to sort of bring them onto stage.
Yeah. Are you the child in the Dear Children project?
No, I think we all are. Uh, we felt when we were interviewing people that uh, the interviews felt like letters to us. They felt like love letters. Um, and that's when we came up with this idea where it would be dear children, comma, and then the kind of a sincerely. So, and the peace comes in between. It's just somebody who lived a long time ago, who may not be with us, just trying to tell us something of their life, and trying to teach us something through their life.
Yeah. Can you just describe the sort of the structure of the show? If you were to describe it to, you're sitting next to somebody on the train and they're like, "What is that show?" Like, how would you describe it in its basic ingredients?
There's two things. There's the project and there's the show. Uh, let's talk about both. So the project is the umbrella kind of entity. The DCS project essentially is young people interviewing the generation born in the 1930s. Maybe even now the 1940s, we might extend it to that, but we won't go beyond that. But at the moment, it's only been the 1930s, interviewing them in order to create small performance pieces for younger audiences, little stories, each story not more than 15 minutes long. So, for instance, the production that you watched was a collection of 7 of these little stories put together, right? All of them were between 5 to 15 minutes. All of them were created entirely independently to each other. I didn't sit down and put this play together like that. Each little piece was created separately and we wove it together to create the production that we brought to Abu Dhabi. We've woven and linked different little stories together to create different productions. So the stories exist in, imagine it's a basket of stories, and you kind of pick them, and they can be viewed by themselves, or they can be strung together and made into something larger. So that is a DCS project.
Do you feel like the process for you was therapeutic, or was it confounding and confusing? Like, when you interviewed these people, did you walk away confused, or like, where did everything go wrong, or how are we still repeating the same cycle? Like, how have we not learned? How did this actually land on you as somebody who's like living in the same place? It's not like a voyeuristic experience for you. You're not going to a new place and saying, "Oh, wow, how interesting and delightful." You're dealing with the consequences of everyone's actions and layering on top of it and creating your own consequential choices.
Gosh, that's a big question. I really got really obsessed, very obsessed with the transcripts. So I've gone through every single one of them. And I used to spend, I think I've spent the most amount of time with this project, very honestly. I used to spend nights, just brooding over this stuff. Some of it really broke my heart, you know. Some of it, I just looked at that and I thought, some of those stories, I was thinking of all the near misses, all of the could have, should have, beens that had this just happened, we wouldn't have lost 10 years in our country's history. And I had this person, it was just said that what they needed to say at that point. I mean, hindsight is perfect vision, right? But I mean, it's just like all of these people talking about everything that they saw so clearly uh, after they had gone through it. And me, born like sort of 50 years after them, having inherited what they had created, and then having the opportunity to actually look at some of the mistakes and really understand how these things came about. I mean, it just made me, it really upset me, but it also made me understand how human beings, how history happens really. It's not on some grand scale, it's just human to human relations. Somebody forgetting to say something to somebody else, somebody turning up at the wrong time, somebody, falling asleep, somebody just being a bit shy. It's just conversations and, relationships, and that just sort of, builds, and then suddenly there's history is made.
Yeah, it's amazing. Have you heard the phrase "Don't sweat the small stuff"?
Yeah.
My grandfather used to say, "Don't sweat the big stuff,"
Mm.
and like, just sweat the small stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's all about the small stuff. It's basically relationships,
Yeah,
petty little egos, dinner parties. Oh my God. History has, we know how history gets made in dinner parties. They really do.
yeah.
Conversations between two people who then, just go home and talk to somebody else, and something spirals out of control.
What's one of the stories that sort of just kind of haunts you? What's one of the stories that sort of like, you're just like, oh my God, it just is an earworm. It just sticks in your head. You can't like it. You can't unremember it.
I can't unremember it. Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I actually turned this into a monologue, and it's there as a piece, because we spoke to this incredible gentleman. He's no longer with us. He passed about a few months back, actually. So his name is Nagalingam Edirisinghe. He's a Tamil gentleman. He was we all knew him growing up. We studied about him in our textbooks because he was one of the few Sri Lankans would won a gold medal at a global athletic event. He'd won the gold medal in the high jumping in the Asian Games or something. So he was like there's a paragraph about him in our, year 7 social studies book or something like that. And he was one of the people we interviewed. And he just, he was a brilliant storyteller. Brilliant. But he told us this story about the racism that he encountered growing up as a young Tamil boy. Because I don't know if I should explain the history. It's the context of this. So Sri Lanka is sort of 80% Sinhalese, and the largest majority is Tamil. And the civil war that we had in our country was the Tamil people led by a separatist organization called the LTTE was wanted a separate state because of the discrimination that they had gone through historically. So this started in the 80s. So this gentleman's born in the 50s. No, he's actually born in the 30s. Sorry. He's born in the 30s. He becomes a star athlete in the 50s. And there was the beginning of racism, violent racism against Tamil people is marked by a riot that happened in 1958, where 1,500 Tamil people were injured and 300 killed. And it was the day that this gentleman won the gold medal for his country, Sri Lanka, at the Asian Games. And here was this young Tamil athlete winning a gold for his country. And what he brought out in his interview is that he was there winning the gold, and he was not told that back home there were riots against the Tamil people. And nobody told him this. And he discovered many weeks later when he received a paper cutting he was still overseas. There was news of his achievement on one side, and he just flipped the paper over, and on the other side was the riots. And that day he decided to leave Sri Lanka because he just couldn't take it. The horrific sort of irony of that moment where he was winning this medal for the country and his people were being killed on the very same day. I mean, that story really haunts me, and we've made it into a one-man piece because he was such a beautiful storyteller, and it's such a powerful story of how the racism actually started and also how much the country has lost, right? Because every time somebody walks away because they can no longer live in your country, they take away so much with them. And that's happened to Sri Lanka over and over again. We've just lost so many people just because we've treated them badly.
Yeah, it rhymes with so many stories. It rhymes with so many stories. I can relate to this so intensely. And I guess that's why the connection with Rwanda also makes sense, because they also have such a similar, every single place that was colonized, these European colonies, just, left us in shambles and really just extracted so much um so much wealth, and in its place left so much depravity and sense of deficiency mindset, because we have been stripped and extracted for
Absolutely.
centuries, that
Yeah,
it makes sense that you think it's going to be deficient um constantly, and so everybody's fighting for scraps.
absolutely. And circling back to that thing that we were talking about earlier, the hope of these young people to rebuild their countries. With what? They had nothing, you know? Um, really, they had nothing. They had no experience. They had, they didn't, I mean, in Sri Lanka, we didn't even have a strong sense of national identity. And that's one thing I realized about my own country when doing the interviews. This is a funny one, Nike. Like, somebody said on the day that we received independence, the headlines of one of the newspapers was not about us receiving independence. It was about the fact that some white guy from Britain came down uh, to visit us, and I think he was the Duke of Gloucester or something, and he was the one who was here to bestow independence on us or whatever. And he'd visited a park, and the headlines were about him visiting the park rather than us receiving independence. I mean,
It's
what a story.
crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. So, we didn't, when, as this small little country, when we received independence, we were really kind of like, what do we do with this? We don't even, know really what does this even mean? And that kind of sort of lackadaisical kind of uh, attitude really made us very, very susceptible to a lot of manipulation and corruption subsequently.
How did it feel to perform this, to put this on in Abu Dhabi? Because like the NYU campus is filled with so many people from Africa, from South Asia, from the Arab world, so many people whose families have run away from places, sometimes running at different speeds, sometimes walking briskly, sometimes
It's really
sprinting
ironic.
away um, from their from where they live, and almost all of which have been places that have been colonized by um, the same people who colonized Sri Lanka and Rwanda. How did it feel to put this on there? Did it feel different than other shows?
It really felt, I mean, after we did the show, it was really, really, we felt so seen. We really felt heard, we felt seen, and there was a palpable response. Like, we really felt the reaction, especially from the students. Many, many students came and spoke to us after the show, said and thanked us and said, thank you for putting stuff so courageously onto the stage. Thank you for the passion that you brought with this. So that meant a lot to us. It was, I mean, it was a tough audience. Uh, Rather, or let me put it this way: we anticipated a tough audience because, as you said, they come from so many different countries. It's so international. There's nothing really holding them together, right? And then there's two more like tiny little obscure countries whose histories that were performing on stage, and people could just look at that, and it could just like, they could just not get it at all. So we were a bit apprehensive. We didn't know if we would really be able to touch the audience because we've performed it in countries before, and countries that we know have been colonized, that have some kind of homogeneous kind of understanding of history, etc. But here, to not just was it such an international audience, but also a lot of young people, and how interested would they really be in something like this? Though, of course, the whole purpose of this was to get them interested, but, we can't sort of assume that they would have been. But they really were. They really were. And it surprised me. And it really kind of brought home again this kind of this feeling that I had earlier on in the project. But even if we break it down to families, right? Young people, when they are shown something like this, suddenly realize the importance of conversation with their parents, with their grandparents, suddenly get interested in what came before them.
Can you tell a little bit of the story of how this ended up at NYU? It's and the dedication in the performance notes.
Yes. So the reason, I mean, it's a very sad story, but then again, We're talking about legacy. We're talking about people's spirit living on. We're talking about the power of memory and the power of influence, right? And ironically, uh, the person who actually made all of this happen, this wonderful dear friend of mine and very, very brilliant academic, his name is Harshana Rambukwella. So he basically put all of this together, all of it, the big bits, the little bits. He came over to Abu Dhabi, I think, as a lecturer about 3 years back. And ever since he got there, he'd been in touch with artists in Asia, in Sri Lanka, saying, we need to bring your stuff here because people don't know enough of it. And, the South needs to talk to the South. He was very much on about that. He was very, very keen about that. And then he did all the legwork, all of it. He talked to Bill, he talked to many other academics. He sort of got the support, not just in terms of enthusiasm, but also financial support. He put it all together. And, you know, I mean, literally a couple of days after we signed along the dotted line and he pushed everything through. And he was so proud of all of it. He was so happy to bring it all together. Really terrible morning, he passed away. But that also galvanized the entire NYU community. And I must say, I would not have seen that side to NYU had not this tragedy happened. I was so amazed at how they just came together, the faculty, the students, really with a mandate that this will continue, that Harshana's name will be honored, and they backed it up with not just words, financial support, and all of that. And they did a really fantastic show and a tribute to him. But I mean, I guess that's life, right? That's life, and that's very much what the play is talking about as well.
That's a beautiful tribute, but a really heartbreaking, situation. Um, yes, but I'm really happy that at least there's, such a moving tribute to the things that it seemed like um, Harshana stood for. So that's amazing. Maybe a way to close the conversation is talk a little bit about the legacy of the project and sort of its own life. So after a decade of the project, what do you think that today's young artists can learn about the value of intergenerational dialogue, and what's left for the future of DCS and a future of, I guess, this version of DCS?
Um, I think after doing the DCS project, what I realized is that I think there are many attempts at intergenerational kind of conversations, archiving. It's not that it's not done, but I think what really kind of worked in the DCS project is the fact that we did the interviews, we did the transcriptions, we did the studying of all of that, but then also we owned it. In rehearsal, we took it, we embodied it, we made it our own, we got excited about it, and we played around with it. You talked about play earlier. Theater really is still very much, it is about play. Even if it's serious theater, we play a lot. And I think that is really important in this intergenerational exchange. The embodiment, the sort of almost the taking that spirit into your body, and working on it and putting it out into the present world, um, I think it's an important quality of intergenerational conversation. Because sometimes I feel that people go into a lot of effort into interviewing, and then they just have this reams and reams of like photographs and just like interviews or transcripts or someone just talking. And it just remains very much in the space of the older generation. And I'm not saying I'm not critiquing it. I'm just saying what worked for DCS and why it's so exciting is that we did that work, but then we also just owned it.
Okay, I have one last question before we wrap up. My last question is, how do you feel as we slowly transition and very fortunately transition into becoming one of the elders? How do you feel when people come to you and say, hey, tell me the story of your youth and some of the choices and mistakes that you may have made?
Oh my God. Like, I've seen, I don't know your political stance. I'm making assumptions here, but I'm going to tell you mine. It's been, uh, right now I'm pretty stuck with what's happening, in Palestine right now. Not, not only because it's horrific, but also because it's so public. And I mean, things like this have happened before. It's just that we all are part of it now because we can see it happening, and the complete inability to move things. It's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm already in conversation with younger people who themselves are feeling so helpless, right? But okay, let me try to be a little bit more hopeful. Uh, so Sri Lanka, I mean, what's happening in a global uh, stage, Mikey, is really depressing. I sometimes, there are days I just can't even engage with it, because I just makes me not want to do anything because you feel so insignificant. Uh, and the bad guys are so big and they're everywhere. um, but if I take an example from my own country, Sri Lanka, we've had a long trajectory of just political corruption, mismanagement, racism, war, insurrections, la di da, all of that. And all these small sort of civic movements, people, Sri Lankans are generally really nice people, we're known to be hospitable, we're known to be friendly and all of that, and yet we've messed up so much. It's just inconceivable. Uh, and then something remarkable happened on a very average day. In 2022, there was an uprising, right? A people's uprising in Sri Lanka, which, long story short, we were all part of it. We all came together in just the most powerful, like really beautiful way. It really reinforced my belief in humanity when I saw what happened on the ground, because it was a leaderless movement, truly organic, truly people driven, and truly, truly committed to nonviolence, which was very, very difficult. But for 103 days, we held out. And there were a few things we achieved. We got rid of a central bank governor, a prime minister, a finance minister, and ultimately, a very powerful executive president. The constitution came back, slapped us in the face, and everything was reinstated, right? After that, we just went on as usual, and it was difficult. However, in something deep within the Sri Lankan conscience changed and has altered, and nobody can ever mess with that. Nobody can change that, and we are now a different people. So, I mean, what I learned from that and what I will hold on to for the rest of my life, because I was very, very close to cynicism, thinking that nothing really matters, there's no point trying, you know. But something that somebody told me, which has become one of the maxims of my life now, is that for a long time, nothing happens. And then suddenly, everything happens all at once. And then you realize that everything you do during that long time where you feel nothing is happening prepares you for what you have to do very fast under a lot of stress when everything happens all at once. It really brings out the true person in you, and people are seen for who they are, right? And that has really altered my understanding of the importance of just quietly putting your head down and doing what you need to do in your corner of the world, contributing drop by drop to the next great avalanche that will happen. It will happen, but all of us need to do what we need to do to make it happen. And it's difficult to not get pulled down when you can't you can't see beyond the the great big barriers. But yeah, in my own life experience, I had the privilege of being part of a true people-led protest movement, which brought out the best in humanity, and that has solidified my faith that things like that happen, and that just moves the dial. It moved the dial in Sri Lanka. It did move the dial in Sri Lanka, and I believe that that will happen sooner than later, or maybe later than sooner. Who knows? But it will happen, and everything that we do feeds that eventuality.
Inshallah, as they say. Ruwanthie, thanks so much. This was a privilege and a pleasure to speak to you. So I really appreciate this. If people can find out, listening to this, people can find out more about your work. I guess it's very easy to find you online, and they can find out more about this this production easily on the NYU AD website. But I really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, Mikey, and you were a wonderful host. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you very much.